Hello and welcome to Staying on Task, Effective Workplace from Home Strategies with Carmelita Scott. My name is Rachel Seymour and I serve as the Director of the Biloxi Chamber as well as Operations Manager for the Mississippi Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce, where our mission is to connect, inform, advocate, and develop. Carmelita serves as the Community Development Relationship Manager for Woodforest National Bank. She also has work from home experience prior to the COVID-19 epidemic. So she's going to give us her expertise and tips and how to stay on task and keep going throughout the day.
Yes, Rachel, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be presenting this topic since, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people who previously weren't used to working from home are now being asked to work from home. So we're going to start with the acronym of TASK. We're going to talk about time strategies, actions around with certain actions that you're going to facilitate throughout your day, your site, and Kinship. Time, we're going to talk about your start and end time, and we're going to talk about having proper breaks and setting boundaries. Your start time, you definitely want to create a good morning routine. And I like to think that a proper morning routine actually starts the day before. So you remember when you were a small child, you would lay out your clothes the day before. You may even plan out how you're going to do your hair. This is no different. You definitely want to create that daily routine. You want to get dressed. I know a lot of people would joke around on Facebook or whatever social media platform and say, I've never lived in my PJs so much in my life before because now they're working from home. But for me, I find myself being a lot more productive when I get up every day at the same time. I have that cup of coffee and I actually get dressed as though I'm leaving my house to go into the office. Along that same vein, you definitely want to keep regular hours. If you're used to starting your day at 8 a.m., you don't want to randomly start your day at 9:30 on Wednesday and 10 o'clock on Friday, because you are an employee of a company and they're looking for you to be there that minimum 7 or 8 hours every day. Breaks and boundaries. This is very important. You definitely want to take regular breaks. I don't care whether it is you standing up every hour just to stretch, because I will say working from home is considered a sedentary lifestyle because you are seated for the majority of your day. So you definitely want to build into your day regular breaks. This is not to say that maybe you're going to get a cup of coffee or that you want to get something to eat. It may just be for you to step away from your computer for a few minutes. Your lunch break is equally as important. You definitely want to take minimum 45 minutes to an hour lunch break as well. But with the lunch break, I don't mean a lunch break where you're eating at your desk or where you may be checking emails, on your phone. You want to truly unplug from work for that lunch break. And lastly, this particular point is very important because I know I've been a victim of this before. I've had a few days here and there where I just wasn't feeling well, but I was thinking, I don't exactly have to get up and get dressed. Maybe I can just kind of roll out of bed and actually clock into the office by logging into my work email, responding to emails, etc. But you don't want to do that because you're still robbing yourself of the time that your body needs to recharge itself, okay? So you definitely want to watch those things. Your end of day. So this is equally as important as getting up and starting your day on time. You want to have a end of day closeout routine. So you want to update your to-do list from the day. We're going to get into to-do list a little bit later in the presentation, but you want to kind of close out that to-do list and say, okay, was I able to achieve everything on that list? Is there anything that I may need to move from this day to the next day? You want to organize your workspace. When you walked up to that workspace that morning, everything probably was put away properly. Maybe you needed to review some documents. You want to place those documents in a folder, lock them in your desk drawer or what have you. And lastly, you want to clear your brain and reflect on your day. So as you know, when you're working from home and you're doing home while you're at work a lot of times. A lot of times we tend to blur those lines, but you definitely want to disconnect. And one disconnecting activity that I like to do is to reflect on what I've accomplished that day. So as I'm updating my to-do list, I'm actually physically checking things off of that list and saying, wow, I replied to all 8 of those emails that I said I wanted to get done today. Or wow, I actually cleaned my desk drawer today. So I'm rocking and rolling. This is good. End of day, check. Action. So in this particular category, we're going to talk about SMART goals, to-do lists, and communicating. SMART goals. This is an acronym that I truly love because it's one that I attach to any sort of goal that I place in front of me. So a SMART goal is basically outlined by being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And by specific, you're going to ask yourself, what do I want to do? Measurable, how will I track my progress? Achievable, how will I do it? Relevant, is this something that I have to do right now, or is this something that can be pushed off to another week? And lastly, when do you want to do it, or when do you want to have that goal achieved by? So you're going to attach those same SMART goal principles and attach them to your to-do list. So you definitely want to write them down. I don't know about anybody else's brain, but I can't remember things the way I used to a few years back. So I'm definitely keeping a written to-do list. It doesn't mean that you have to physically write it down, but you definitely want to write it or type it, or even I've actually been utilizing voice notes a lot more now because I feel like some of my best ideas hit me when I'm in the car. So I flip on that voice note recorder real quick and I jot, verbally state what I need to do. Next, you want to use calendar appointments, because if you're working on a team, they may look on your calendar and may schedule a meeting, say at 10 a.m., but that may have been a time that you wanted to knock out one of your tasks, or maybe you wanted to, like I said, clean out your desk drawer. And so you're like, oh man, I really want to do that today at 10 o'clock, and now I can't because I didn't block out that time on my calendar. So you definitely want to utilize that function of that calendar daily. And lastly, you want to check items off. I referenced this in the last section, but you definitely want to check items off, as this is a means of you documenting your achievements for the day. Communicate. This section is so important. Emails. You definitely want to make sure that you are starting emails properly. Good morning, good afternoon, how are you, etc. Because a lot of times when you are working from home, you tend to become more comfortable. So I know for me, I used to start a lot of my emails with, hey, exclamation point. Like that was almost my signature greeting. But here recently, I'm kind of like, okay, people need a little bit more happiness in their life these days. Everybody's cooped up inside. So my emails tend to start off a lot more flowery now. Now I'm saying, hi, I hope this email finds you well and in good spirits, blah, blah, blah. So you definitely want to communicate via email in the proper way, and also to not over communicate via email. Sometimes it does take a phone call. Just pick up that phone and, talk to that person about whatever it is you need to relay. Text messages. Text messaging is a very common thing. Everybody uses it now, but you don't want to text things that may be better in a documented form or an official form, say an email or maybe even a memo of some sort. So you definitely don't want to get too comfortable sending text messages. And also the time that you may send that text message, because the text message acronym is for short message system or instant message. So as soon as you send that message, that recipient is getting it right then instantly. So you definitely don't want to do that too early in the day or too late in the day. Next, documents. You want to keep documents on what you're doing. So for example, I work in banking. So a lot of times, a lot of my work is considered back office work. But at the end of a week, I may not have anything truly to show for that work. So if my boss is like, hey, what did you do today? I'm kind of like, oh, I checked up on this or that. But if I was to keep maybe a running document of what I did for that week, that would definitely be more effective than me just kind of rattling off everything that I did that week. Lastly, conference calls. As everybody is beginning to work more remotely, you want to make sure that your voice is being heard. I know a lot of people are going to video conferences, but maybe not everybody. So if you're on a conference call, you at least want to minimally say, good morning to everybody on the team, or maybe insert a phrase or something like that very casually, or better yet, actually add something of value to that conference call. Your site. This is another important element in working from home. We're going to talk about your physical site, your technology needs, and your mental needs. So your physical workspace, I cannot stress this enough. Your workspace is your workspace. And I don't know if you're looking at the picture right now, for people who may be watching this later in the day and kind of maybe have it You're hearing it verbally, but not looking at it. But there's a cat sitting on the printer. That cat, maybe you like your pets in your workspace, but I'd say a pet may be a little bit more acceptable than your child or your husband. You definitely don't want to have like food in your workspace or anything like that, because again, if your company is providing these materials, you definitely want to respect those items. And, you know, worst case scenario, if you move on to a better opportunity, you want to return those items in the best possible condition. You want to, and along that same line, you want to have a space that you need. I know for me, I use multiple screens because I'm dealing with a lot of spreadsheets all the time. Maybe you need a laptop, maybe you need a desktop. You definitely want to jot down everything that you're going to need to properly work from home. You're going to need to be comfortable, which means you're going to need a proper desk chair. I can't stress enough how important the chair that you're going to be sitting in for multiple hours, how important that is. And lastly, you want to talk a little bit about natural light. I'm sitting here right now with my window open because, you know, there's a reason everybody wants that coveted corner office. It's because there are 2 windows in it normally, but you definitely want to add in some natural light to your day so you don't feel as cooped up. Your tech needs are almost just as important as your physical needs. If you've recently started working from home, you want to make sure that your Wi-Fi or your broadband can handle the workload. If you are doing a lot of video conferencing, maybe you have to work via a lot of Teams or a SharePoint system. You want to make sure that your home internet can suffice for what it is that you need. A work phone. This is something that varies with individuals. Some people have had the same phone number for years, and so they need that phone number. That's how they connect with everybody else in the world. But for me, I actually opted for a second phone number because my phone number actually had the area code of where I went to undergrad, which is another story. But yes, so you definitely want to try to have a separate phone number. And this is for 2 reasons. The main reason being that you can set the do not disturb on your personal phone and not be glued to your personal phone, not to mention you won't be taking personal calls with your work calls, you know? So you definitely want to be sensitive and aware of that because, again, landlines are pretty much non-existent. So everybody is using a cell phone. So you may just be a little more prone to answer every single phone call, even if it is a personal call. Your network security, again, depending on the type of position you're in, you may work in telehealth or maybe you work for a law firm. You want to make sure that those documents that you're emailing back and forth or that you're uploading to a particular site, you want to make sure that those documents are being kept safe. And also, too, this goes a little bit back to our physical space. You want to make sure that if you require a locked file cabinet for certain documents, you want to make sure that you have that the day you start. That is not something that you want to, it's not something that you're going to want to wait on because you're going to want to protect your company's secure information. Mental, this just may be my favorite slide because if you look at little people's brains, you'll see everybody's brain works differently. You know, so you're going to need to reset your brain every single day. This is resetting in the morning while you're brushing your teeth. Maybe you're a positive affirmation person. Maybe you just kind of listen to music in the morning to get going. But you're going to want to reset your brain every day when you start your day and also when you end it. And secondly, you want to set reasonable expectations for what it is that you can do. Just because you don't have to get in your car and commute somewhere doesn't mean that you should add in that commute time to your daily task. So if you're used to working, say, a 9 to 5, but maybe you used to commute an hour in, that doesn't mean you're supposed to work now from 8 to 6. That just means you now lost your commute time. So definitely set reasonable expectations for yourself and try not to overload yourself. Grouping. Grouping is a term I like to use in terms of how to separate certain things from each other. So if maybe you have a good work friend that you talk to all the time, maybe you talking about fun stuff with that person, okay? But you're going to need to sit that to the side when it's time for the conference call. You're not going to need to be on there, you know, shooting the breeze with that person on a very professional call. So this is something that I feel like working from home definitely calls into play because everybody is working remotely right now. So you definitely want to, like I said, separate everybody into those separate groups. And also when you're dealing with your bosses, I think this is another thing. And these days and times, a lot of work structures are becoming a lot more flat because everybody's on the conference call. Nobody's sitting at the head of the conference table like you're used to being when you're in that physical space. But you want to always be aware of segmenting certain people out and saying, okay, I still have to call this person Mr. Brown, Miss Scott, or what have you. Kinship. This just maybe my second favorite slide. On this slide, we're going to talk about your colleagues, your work from home family, and certain online communities that may be available to support you. Your colleagues, you may develop a special virtual work from home buddy. This may be the colleague that you have your morning cup of coffee with every day, or this may be your lunch break colleague. So every day around 12 or so, that colleague is going to call you. You definitely want to develop genuine relationships with that person along those same lines. So I definitely think that the same way, whenever you're in the physical office, you may have that cubicle buddy. You want to create that same virtual work from home buddy as well. And like I said, back to the genuine relationship, you definitely don't want to create surface relationships with people, which is something that can happen. When you come into a department and you've never physically sat next to that person, it may be difficult to form a relationship with them. And that's where unplugging for that lunch break comes in. And maybe you say, okay, this is us walking to the local eatery up the street. Let's just chat. How are your kids? How's your family? What's going on in your life? So that way, if it does seem off with them one day, you may know what happened. You may say, oh, I think her cat is sick, or something happened to her dog, or what have you. So you definitely want to be attuned to the people that you're working with. And thirdly, create projects. So this may be the same person, may be a different person. It may be somebody who maybe just joined the department and maybe needs a friend. So you may say, hey, I noticed that the department is looking to redevelop their brand. How would you like to get together, maybe work on some logo options for them? Maybe if you're in the marketing department or something like that. So definitely create projects, because what that does is does two things. You come across as friendly. And secondly, it basically pulls you out of the crowd because you've now reached out to that person and created a special project for the two of you. Your work from home family, these are people who don't actually work for the same company as you. They may be board members, acquaintances that you may have run across, or even social groups. So you definitely want to have your colleagues that you kind of pair yourself up with. And you also want to create an external work from home family as well, because you are in your city working. Online communities, there are several blogs, subscription services, or newsletters, and various social media groups that are available to you now. And I was talking earlier and just saying that I believe if I went online and I searched for a special, work from home group, I bet you I would find it, because there is a support group for everybody. So you definitely want to be attuned to those things. And in terms of blogs and subscriptions, I tend to like blogs because they give you little nuggets of wisdom and things that maybe you didn't even think about. And so maybe there's a little nugget that I probably missed, and you look on your blog or you get your monthly news and they're like, oh, wow, I just picked up this very cool tip. And it basically can alert you when you've been seated too long and say, hey, get up and stretch or something like that. So just different little fun things to keep you engaged with the broader community of work from home individuals. So I just want to, in wrapping up, I just want to go back over our acronym. Our acronym is TIME. And in that particular section, we talked about starting on time every day, getting up, setting a regular morning routine, and also creating those boundaries. We talked about certain actions and SMART goals and how to create them and how to check them off. We talked about your site, your physical site, your mental state. You definitely want to be attuned to how aware you are of your physical health and mental health as well as you work from home, because it can be considered isolating as well. And fourth, we talked a little bit about kinship. Of course, kinship is people. I know for me, when I first started working from home, that was one of the first culture shocks. I was like, okay, who is supposed to plan my birthday lunch? There was no one. I don't have a birthday lunch. I hadn't had a birthday lunch in maybe 4 years. So you definitely want to find, like I said, this work from home community. And actually recently, it is before the COVID-19 pandemic, we actually had a virtual birthday for one of our colleagues. So this is now becoming a thing where you can hop on a WebEx for 10 minutes or during lunchtime and say, hey, happy birthday, guys, again, to make sure you create that kinship amongst your team. And lastly, of course, this wouldn't be a presentation without offering you a few don'ts. I've given you a ton of to-dos, but I want to drop a few don'ts on you as well. So don't get easily distracted. You know, distractions are everything from the cat on the printer, from your personal phone going off, text messages. Maybe you decided to throw a load of clothes in the washing machine. Well, when that buzzer goes off, what are you going to do? You're going to go move the clothes from the washing machine to the dryer. So you don't want to set yourself up for failure by succumbing to those distractions. Secondly, you don't want to overload your schedule. As I mentioned earlier, just because you work from home doesn't mean that you can't get overwhelmed at the drop of a dime. So you definitely want to be keenly aware of what is a normal workload for you. Thirdly, you don't want to neglect your health. As I mentioned earlier, I think I've even mentioned it a few times, your mental health. Again, working from home can be isolating, so you definitely want to reach out to various individuals. And I would even reach out to a person who has worked from home for a lot longer than what you have. So definitely reach out to them and ask them for certain tips and tools, and maybe you'll create a lunch buddy even. And lastly, text messages. Text messages can be such a time drainer in this day and age because everybody wants everything instantly. Like I've been at a company where they'll send an email and 5 minutes later, it's like a text. Hey, did you get that email? And in my brain, I'm thinking, hey, no, I'm not back at my desk yet, but apparently you need something right now, right? But again, you just want to set those boundaries and make sure to not start texting too much, whether it's personally or professionally. And that's all I have, guys. Thanks for having me today, Rachel.
Carmelita, that was fantastic. I certainly made a lot of notes because this working from home is new to me for sure. So I appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.